In this presentation, we'll tackle the basics of cover letters. We'll want to understand the purpose and strategy behind a cover letter and look at common cover letter content and layout. We'll talk about best practices and mistakes to avoid. The basic purpose of a cover letter is really to complement the resume by showing why you want the position. The resume shows that you can do the job, but the cover letter is about why you want to. The cover letter should briefly point out things to look for on the resume, but it really adds relevant information that can't easily be addressed on the resume. Things that pertain to why you're interested in an organization, or why you chose a career field, or why you would be motivated and engaged in the job if you were hired. These things matter to the recruiter. They're just not easy to put on a resume, and that's the purpose of a cover letter. Like resumes, cover letters do have hidden purposes. They too show that you understand the organization and the position. But more importantly, cover letters demonstrate how you fit with that organization. Companies spend enormous amounts of money to recruit, select, hire, and onboard employees. And at the end of the day, they want to hire people who are excited about the job and who will be motivated and engaged if hired. The cover letter is one of the ways that you can persuade a prospective employer that you would in fact show up every day for work excited to be there and ready to do your very best. So a cover letter is a persuasive document still full of relevant information that shows that you know something about the organization and have an authentic interest in the position. It is a complement to the resume, not a paragraph version of the resume. The cover letter should never be duplicated from employer to employer. It should be unique and fresh every time. And it shouldn't be cheesy or seem inauthentic. It shouldn't be an attempt to suck up to the employer or to inflate your qualifications. Instead, it should really address why you want the job, and it should be believable. A cover letter is typically done in a standard business letter format or included in an email, and these parts would be very typical in any cover letter. The date of the letter, a salutation, meaning that it's addressed to someone, Mr. or Ms., Doctor. You want to have a real person's name if you can. If not, you can say something like Dear Hiring Manager or Dear Recruiter. Then there are typically 3 to 4 paragraphs. An introductory paragraph, a persuasive paragraph where you describe why you want the job or why you're interested in the organization, and this can typically be 1 or 2 paragraphs, a brief closing paragraph, and then of course your signature. So let's talk about that introductory paragraph. It addresses what you're applying for, how you heard about it, and any names you want to drop. So for example, you could say, Sally Jones in the radiology department suggested that I apply for the position. It's an opening statement of your interest in the job and or how you fit with the organization, and it really grabs the reader's attention and sets them up to read both your resume and the rest of the cover letter. Now I've got a sample intro paragraph here that I'm not going to read to you, but I want you to have it here so that you can come back and refer to it to look for an example of what you might say. The phrase first-class medical care and world-class attention is taken right from the organization's website. The persuasive paragraphs, of which there are 1 or 2, are really what's unique to every application, because the reasons you want to work for a company or want a particular job or would be a good fit are going to be different from place to place. What the reader's trying to determine is, would we like having you around here? Would we like having you as part of our team? And so give this some thought. Make it real. and authentic. If you're asked about this very thing in the interview, you should be able to credibly defend what you wrote in your cover letter. Now, here's a very detailed example of a couple of persuasive paragraphs for you to look at a little bit later. But this will give you a sense of how these persuasive paragraphs refer briefly to the resume so that the reader knows what to look for on the resume, but they bring in job relevant information that isn't easily addressed on the resume. And together, the resume and the cover letter make a really full picture of why you want to do the job and the proof that you are in fact qualified. A resume ends with a closing paragraph where you thank the reader for considering your application. You express your interest in some way again and refer in some way to the next steps. The paragraph that is a closing is really the impression that you're going to end up leaving with the reader. And so you want to make sure that you don't commit to doing anything in that paragraph that you can't actually do. So for example, don't say, I'll call you on next Tuesday at 1 o'clock to discuss my application, if you would dread calling the next Tuesday at 1 o'clock. But you want to refer in some way to what you hope would happen next. And there is a sample closing paragraph. And obviously you would have a signature, either written or electronic, on this document. The cover letter format, as I mentioned before, is usually done in a standard business letter format or in an email. No matter which way you do it, the information and the basic structure is the same. And here, unlike the resume, you really don't want to exceed 1 page. On the resume, we've said, look, say what you need to say, and if it goes a little over a page, don't worry about it. But here, you really want to get this persuasive message across quickly, and so don't exceed a page. No more than 3 to 4 paragraphs. The best cover letters are written fresh for every position so that no one feels that they got a form letter. In fact, no one should get a form letter. Don't copy paste cover letters. It's a recipe for disaster. Eventually, you will accidentally leave a different company name somewhere in that letter and it will come back to haunt you. So write it new for every job you're applying for. The cover letter should show that you actually know a little something about the company and position. It should be obvious that you did your homework. It doesn't count to say, I went to your website and I know I'd love working for you. Instead, say something like, I saw on your website that you're planning on a 15% expansion in the next 2 years, and I'd like to be part of the new staff you hire for that. The cover letter should be believable and address why you want the position. Don't be afraid to say, I'd like to have this job and here's why. However, it should be realistic because your ability to contribute early on in the job is not as great as it will be later. So avoid saying things like, I'll contribute to the bottom line, I'll make you more profitable. It's okay to talk about the skills you'd bring, but let's be realistic about how much you're likely to contribute early on in a new position. A good cover letter makes the connection between you, the company, and the position requirements. People commonly make these types of mistakes in cover letters. It reads like a template or it is a template. We've already discussed that's not a good idea. It repeats resume content. That's a waste of space. There's a difference between referring to resume content, which makes sense, and just narrating the resume in paragraph form. And as I mentioned in the previous slide, don't overestimate the contribution you can make to the company. Say what you hope to be able to bring, but don't be arrogant. And like the resume, avoid grammar and spelling errors, which speak poorly of you and your attention to detail. Finally, think of the cover letter as a 90-second written answer to the question, why should we consider hiring you? Speak of what really motivates you for the job. Make your best 2 or 3 points, but don't go on and on. And like the resume, consider a basic cover letter strategy as well as what might be common in your profession. Are there things typically done in cover letters for your particular career area that you need to think about? And come and work with a career coach to further tailor your cover letter. Just like resumes, cover letters take some time to become familiar with. In fact, many people think it's harder to write a cover letter than it is to write a resume. So the Office of Career Services, as well as your professors, will be happy to give you input into your cover letter content. But in the end, just as with the resume, this is your document and you need to feel comfortable with the content.